The woman whose skeleton recorded progress. Sometime more than 10,000 years ago, beside the Euphrates River in what's now Syria, a young woman knelt in front of a flat stone. She placed wild grain on its surface, leaned forward, and pushed another stone across it, back and forth, again, again, again. She did this for hours. She had no supervisor, no performance review, and no motivational poster reminding her that teamwork makes the dream work. She had something more effective. If she stopped, her people didn't eat. Thousands of years later, archaeologists excavated the settlement where she lived, Abu Hurayya, one of the rare sites preserving human life on both sides of the transition from hunting and gathering to farming. Her bones told the story. The woman's toes were severely damaged from kneeling with her feet bent beneath them. Her knees, arms, and shoulders and lower back carried the marks of repetitive grain processing. Some of this labor appears to have begun during adolescence and continued for hours every day. Progress had arrived. Her skeleton kept the minutes. We are taught that agriculture rescued humanity from a miserable existence. Before farming, the story goes, people wandered half-starved through a hostile wilderness, hoping to find a berry before getting eaten by something with very big teeth. Then someone planted wheat. Food became plentiful. Villages became cities. Cities became civilizations. Civilization gave us writing, science, cathedrals, antibiotics, indoor plumbing, and a refrigerator capable of informing you that the yogurt is feeling neglected. The story is not entirely false. It's simply told from the perspective of civilization. Christopher Ryan's book, Civilized to Death, The Price of Progress, challenges what he calls the narrative of perpetual progress, the assumption that each new stage of social complexity must have produced a better human life. Ryan argues that foragers were often healthier, more egalitarian, more socially connected, and freer than the people who replaced them. He also argues that civilization's demand for constant expansion may eventually destroy the ecological systems supporting it. Some of Ryan's claims are deliberately provocative, and hunter-gatherer societies were never one uniform paradise. But the central question remains disturbing. What if agriculture didn't initially improve the lives of individual humans? What if it just created more humans, while making many of them sicker, poorer, less free, and easier to control? And what if the machine we built afterwards cannot survive unless it keeps growing, even when there's nowhere left to grow? Chapter 1. The Antelope That Belonged to Everyone. Between 1958 and 1961, anthropologist James Woodburn observed the Hadza hunter-gatherers of Tanzania. When a hunter killed a large animal, he was recognized as the hunter, but that did not mean he could carry the meat home, lock it in a private freezer, and announce that anyone wanting protein should have planned better. The meat was distributed throughout the camp. People asked for shares. Sometimes they demanded them. The hunter had limited control over who received what, and his own household did not necessarily receive more than anyone else. Later Hadza research has found that there was sometimes more control in some circumstances, but large game continues to be widely distributed beyond the hunter's immediate family. This is often described as generosity, but that's only partly true. Hunter-gatherer sharing can involve kindness, affection, reciprocity, obligation, relentless complaining, and the understanding that if you attempt to hide an entire antelope, someone will notice. It was not communism. It was a family with really good tracking skills. Anthropologists call one version of this system demand sharing. In mobile foraging societies, valuable food is difficult to obtain, spoils quickly, and arrives unpredictably. Sharing smooths out risk. Today, you find the honey. Tomorrow, someone else kills the animal. Next week, everyone fails, and the group survives on whatever the person with the least disappointing afternoon brings home. The system also makes extreme wealth difficult. A successful hunter can't preserve 40 years of antelope and charge interest on it. He can't buy the waterhole, patent the gazelle, or establish antelope premium, now with faster delivery and fewer advertisements. His food will rot. His possessions must be light enough to carry. His neighbors are standing right there. Mobility protected freedom. If someone became unbearable, people could leave. If a would-be chief started giving too many orders, the group did not need to storm his palace. He didn't have a palace. He had a basket. This doesn't mean foragers lack jealousy, violence, status competition, selfishness, or male dominance. Hunter-gatherer societies vary greatly, and modern groups cannot be treated as living fossils. But many mobile foraging societies develop powerful customs against hoarding and domination because cooperation was not a moral luxury. It was a survival technology. Their health also complicates the popular image of prehistoric life. Hunter-gatherer mortality was far higher than ours, particularly during infancy and childhood. Infection, injury, childbirth, and violence killed people modern medicine would save. A 30-year-old forager faced a much higher annual risk of death than a 30-year-old person in a wealthy modern country. But prehistoric life was not necessarily a universal sprint towards death at 30. Studies of traditional hunter-gatherer populations estimate the most common age of adult death at roughly the late 60s through 70s. Those who survived childhood could live for decades, and post-reproductive adults were important providers of food, knowledge, and childcare. They were also extraordinarily active. They walked, climbed, carried, dug, gathered, played, rested, and performed irregular bursts of intense effort. Obesity was rare, while metabolic and cardiovascular diseases common in industrial societies were generally much less prevalent among minimally acculturated foraging populations. They didn't need fitness trackers. If you'd been motionless for 11 hours, someone assumed you'd been bitten. There may have been another health difference hiding inside all that dirt. Human immune systems did not evolve in sterile houses. For most of our history, people lived surrounded by soil microbes, animals, bacteria, fungi, and parasites, especially parasites. Helminth worms evolved a remarkable strategy for surviving inside humans. Instead of defeating the immune system, many of them persuade it to calm down. Chronic helminth infections can increase regulatory immune activity, including regulatory T cells and signals such as IL-10, helping prevent the host from launching an inflammatory war powerful enough to remove the parasite. And sometimes that restraint appears to spill over onto things that are not dangerous: pollen, dust, food proteins. The immune system raised in a biologically crowded world may have spent its childhood learning worm, bacteria, animal feces, fungus, actual problem. The modern immune system grows up in filtered air, sanitized kitchens, chlorinated water, antibiotics, and antibacterial soap, then encounters a peanut and calls NATO. We can see a related effect even without parasites. Amish farm children exposed to extraordinarily microbe-rich traditional farming environments have dramatically less asthma and allergic sensitization than genetically similar Hutterite children raised around industrial farming. Their immune system shows profound differences in innate immune activity. This is not an advertisement for intestinal worms. A 2022 analysis covering almost 100,000 people found no overall protective effect of helminth infections against allergic disease. Different parasites behave differently. Hookworm has sometimes been associated with less asthma, while Ascaris has been associated with increased airway reactivity. Parasites can also cause anemia, malnutrition, organ damage, and death. So worms may not keep our immune system stronger, but they may have helped to keep them humble. Our defenses evolved expecting a biologically crowded world. We cleaned much of that out. And in some people, the army now has fewer enemies and a lot more time to inspect the civilians. Early humans paid heavily for infection and injury. Modern humans survive those dangers, then spend decades being slowly injured by their office chairs. Before we continue, please like and subscribe. It helps other people find the channel, and unlike agriculture, clicking the button has not yet produced landlords, tax collectors, or a hereditary grain aristocracy. But give it time. Chapter 2. The Worst Success Story in History. Agriculture succeeded spectacularly. The important question is, for whom? A field of grain can feed more people per acre than scattered wild foods. Stored cereal can support larger populations, survive seasonal shortages, provision armies, and keep bureaucrats alive through meetings that should have been an email. But more food per acre does not necessarily mean better food per person. At Abu Hurayya, people gradually shifted from a varied foraging economy towards cultivated cereals. Dental evidence shows that their food became harder and coarser during the transition, while skeletal remains reveal intense repetitive labor associated with processing grains. At Katelhoyuk, a large farming settlement in what is now Turkey, population growth brought people, animals, waste, parasites, and pathogens into intimate proximity. As agriculture expanded, researchers found increased tooth decay, evidence of nutritional stress, and worsening health conditions associated with crowding and a carbohydrate-heavy diet. Across many regions, though not all, early farmers became shorter and showed more skeletal or dental evidence of nutritional stress and disease than preceding foragers. Research in Central and Southeastern Europe found significantly reduced stature and body mass among early agriculturalists, with especially pronounced growth impairment among women. Agriculture narrowed diets. A forager might eat dozens or hundreds of plant and animal species across the year. A farmer could become dependent on a handful of crops vulnerable to drought, disease, insects, war, and whichever local official had recently discovered taxation. Sedentary populations also lived beside their own waste and domesticated animals, creating ideal conditions for infectious disease. Then there was the work. Agriculture did not eliminate food gathering. It transformed food gathering into soil preparation, planting, weeding, guarding, harvesting, threshing, grinding, storage, animal care, irrigation, fence repair, and staring at the sky with increasing hostility. Humans invented farming and immediately received several entry-level positions in farming. So why did agriculture spread? Because cultures do not compete solely by making individuals healthy or happy. They also compete by producing more people. Agriculture could support far denser populations. Even if early farmers were shorter, sicker, and worked longer, farming communities could eventually outnumber, absorb, displace, or defeat neighboring foragers. Agriculture was not necessarily a better lifestyle, but it was an effective replication strategy. Wheat did not need to make humans happy. It needed humans to clear forests for it, kill competing plants, carry water, defend fields, and spread wheat across the planet. We say humans domesticated grain, but from the wheat's perspective, the arrangement remains under review. Chapter 3, The First Bank Account. About 11,300 years ago at Dra, near the Dead Sea in modern Jordan, people constructed sophisticated granaries. These circular buildings had elevated floors allowing air to circulate beneath stored food while helping protect it from moisture, insects, and rodents. The remarkable part is that these granaries appeared before fully domesticated crops. Storage helped create agriculture rather than simply resulting from it. At first, the granaries stood between homes and may have been communal. Later Neolithic storage increasingly moved inside houses. Food that once belonged to the group could now belong to a household. That architectural change may look minor, but it was the invention of a new kind of power. A fresh animal carcass has limits as wealth. It spoils, attracts insects, and makes a poor inheritance unless the hunt is what killed you. Grain is different. Grain can be dried, counted, hidden, guarded, traded, inherited, stolen, loaned, taxed. The first granary was a pantry. It was also a bank, a treasury, an inheritance account, military objective, and future reason for a government employee to ask how much grain you had neglected to declare. Once food could be accumulated, inequality could become durable. Archaeological research finds that disparities generally increased after plant and animal domestication and as societies grew politically larger. New research also suggests that the shift towards land scarcity and differences in storage capacity helped drive long-term inequality, although institutions could reduce or intensify it. Agriculture did not invent hierarchy, private property, or patriarchy in a single afternoon. Some foraging societies accumulated wealth. Some farming societies gave women substantial authority. Human arrangements have always been more varied than our theories, but stored wealth changed the incentives. If your possessions consist mainly of tools, knowledge, and friendships, and food that will spoil by Thursday, controlling your descendants is of limited financial importance. If you own fields, animals, houses, irrigation rights, and 10 years of grain, inheritance becomes serious. Now you must decide who receives the property. To do that, men became intensely interested in identifying their sons. Women's sexuality was no longer merely personal or social. It affects the transfer of wealth. Once property could outlive its owner, paternity became a type of accounting. Land also reduced mobility. A woman couldn't easily walk away from a controlling husband or family if survival depended on access to a particular field, herd, granary, or irrigation system. Later forms of intensive and plow agriculture may have reinforced male-dominated labor and gender norms. Research has found that descendants of societies traditionally using the plow tend to retain less equal attitudes and lower female participation in economic and political life, though agriculture is only one influence among many. Patriarchy did not emerge because men suddenly became unpleasant. Men had been fully capable of unpleasantness for hundreds of thousands of years. Agriculture gave unpleasantness assets. A powerful man could now monopolize land, defend surplus, support armed followers, acquire multiple wives, and pass the entire arrangement to his sons. The bully finally had a retirement plan. Chapter 4. Team Dad. Property changed family organization partly because property made exclusive paternity economically valuable. But exclusive biological fatherhood is not the only way human societies have understood family. Among a number of indigenous societies in lowland South America, anthropologists have documented a belief called partible paternity. According to this idea, a fetus is formed gradually from semen contributed through repeated intercourse. More than one man may therefore contribute to the same child and be recognized as a secondary father. A comparative study of 128 lowland South American societies found partible paternity beliefs widespread across several major language families, suggesting deep roots in Amazonian history. This does not prove that all prehistoric humans believed several men were needed to make one baby. Early humanity left no parenting manuals. But it demonstrates something more important. The modern nuclear family, exclusive paternity, and male ownership of female sexuality are not the only arrangements human beings have ever considered natural. Among the Bari, Aceh, and some other societies, a child can have a primary father and one or more secondary fathers. Researchers have reported that children with recognized secondary fathers sometimes had better survival prospects, possibly because additional men supplied food or protection. The finding does not appear uniformly across every publication, but it reverses the assumption that uncertain paternity must inevitably leave children abandoned. In this system, a woman might seek qualities from several men: strength, intelligence, skill, humor, because each could be understood as contributing to the developing child. It was a prenatal crowdfunding. The child did not have a confused family. The child had a larger support department. Compare this with a property-based patriarchal system. When land and livestock must pass through a male line, a husband's confidence in exclusive paternity becomes economically essential. Sexual jealousy can be converted into law, surveillance, confinement, veiling, punishment, religious commandment, and eventually several thousand years of men explaining that women's restrictions are primarily for women's protection. The belief system follows the assets. When children depend on several adults and wealth is shared, broader parenthood can be useful. When estates must move through a single bloodline, female sexuality becomes a security vulnerability. Civilization did not merely store food, it reorganized love around inventory. Chapter 5. The Civilization That Cannot Stop. Agriculture introduced surplus. Civilization transformed surplus into a command. More. More grain supporting more people requiring more land requiring more soldiers requiring more grain. Every solution enlarged the system that created the next problem. Modern industrial civilization inherits the same logic but removes the seasonal limits. A corporation can't simply earn a healthy profit, provide useful products, pay its workers, and announce that everyone's done enough. Investors expect growth. Governments expect growth. Pensions, debt, employment, tax revenue, and political stability are built around growth. A forest sees maturity as success. An economy sees maturity as a disappointing quarter. This is the trap at the center of Ryan's argument. Progress stopped meaning the reduction of suffering. It came to mean continued expansion. A phone must become faster because the previous phone wasn't fast enough. A refrigerator must connect to the internet because refrigeration had achieved its original goal several decades ago and was beginning to look complacent. A toothbrush now requires Bluetooth. Humanity has become the only species endangered by the processing requirements of its toothbrush. The ecological numbers reveal the cost. According to the United Nations Environment Program, global extraction of natural resources tripled over the past 5 decades preceding 2024. Without major changes, extraction could rise another 60% between 2020 and 2060. The 2025 Planetary Health Check concluded that humanity had exceeded 7 of 9 planetary boundaries, processes regulating Earth's stability and life support systems. All 7 breached boundaries were moving further in the wrong direction. This does not prove that collapse is certain, but it proves that perpetual material expansion on a finite planet is not a good long-term plan. It's an eviction notice written slowly enough for quarterly earnings to remain encouraging. Every civilization believes its complexity is evidence of permanence, but complexity creates dependence. The forager needs land, knowledge, relationships, water, and functioning ecosystems. The modern citizen needs all of those things, plus an electrical grid, fuel network, financial system, global shipping industry, water treatment system, communications network, pharmaceutical supply chain, functioning government, and a password that's not the same as the last 5 passwords. We are more powerful than early humans. We're also more fragile in groups. A foraging camp that loses one food source moves or uses another. A modern city that loses electricity begins Googling, "Can I eat my neighbor's yappy dog?" and then realizing they have no internet. Our civilization has confused increased capability with increased resilience. The systems are not the same. A race car is more capable than a horse. A horse handles a software outage better. Conclusion. Progress towards what? Early man's life was not better in every way. A child with an infection could have used antibiotics that didn't exist yet, but there are superbugs that we don't have antibiotics for today. A difficult birth could become a death sentence. A broken bone, venomous bite, violent attack, or failed hunt could destroy a family. Modern sanitation, medicine, science, legal rights, and technology have prevented suffering on a scale no honest account should minimize. The answer is not to abandon civilization and begin stalking neighborhood squirrels with a handmade spear. The squirrels have seen us deteriorate. They're ready. The lesson is that progress is not automatically the same as improvement. Foragers often had less property but more access to what they needed. They had fewer possessions but stronger obligations to share. They had no health clubs because movement was integrated into life. They had no retirement accounts, but older adults remained embedded in networks that needed their labor, knowledge, and care. They had no social media, yet their social lives contained actual people. Agriculture allowed humanity to multiply. Storage allowed wealth to harden. Wealth allowed hierarchy to survive its creator. Inheritance intensified the control of women and children. States learned to count grain, land, labor, and bodies. Industry learned to convert the entire planet into inventory. Now progress must continue because stopping would threaten the system built on progress. And that's how growth becomes terminal. Cancer is progress without a definition of enough. The future doesn't require rejecting technology. It requires recovering the question mobile foragers were forced to answer every day. What actually helps the group survive? Not what increases production, not what enlarges the institution, not what raises the quarterly numbers. What produces healthier bodies, stronger relationships, freer people, and an environment capable of supporting another generation. Early humans did not possess our knowledge, but they understood limits because limits surrounded them. As a species, we possess extraordinary knowledge, though as individuals, not so much. But we've built an economy dedicated to pretending limits are a negative attitude. The first granary protected humanity from a bad season. Eventually, humanity reorganized itself around filling the granary forever. That might be the real price of progress. We become so good at producing more that we forgot to decide when we've had enough. Hey, thanks for watching my video. Please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to see when I make more. I make these videos totally for free, and your support really helps the channel grow. You can also share this with someone you think will like it. Check out the Amazon links to cool stuff in the description, and tip me if you feel so inclined. Venmo at History of Human Nature. I appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.